know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Tables turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes, people. You know what time it is. You know what it is. It's G, and we are back in the building. We are back. England versus Senegal last night. England ending up 3-0 winners, and they move on to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. And they just got a little test against France. You know, nothing too big, nothing too crazy. You know what I mean? You know, nothing too hard. And that Mbappe, Dembele, you know, Giroud, Griezmann, you know, the Canates, you know, the Chouamani's of this world. So nothing too difficult, but you know, we'll get onto that in the England versus France preview. But just before we dive into the England versus Senegal game, as you guys can see, scrolled across the bottom, we are en route to 150 subs. So please make sure you guys are liking, please make sure you guys are sharing, and please make sure you guys are subscribed to the content. Now, obviously, England's to be honest, in the end, it was a comfortable 3-0 victory. Now, you know, there's, like I keep saying, there's been a lot of talk on Gareth Southgate. And I'll keep saying this on every single stream. There's been a lot of talk on Gareth Southgate. There's been a lot of talk about, you know, Gareth Southgate, his system, Gareth Southgate, you know, the way he plays, this pragmatic style and things like that. But ultimately, we've all got to let that live now. I'll be super honest with you. We've all got to let it live, because the reality is, this guy is getting the results. This guy is, you know, the team is putting in performances, very good performances at that. Haven't lost a game, you know, in this tournament. You know, been unbeaten so far in this tournament. Who knows where that's going to take England? You know, like I said, tough game against France coming up, of course. But the reality is, at this present moment in time, England are doing the stuff. England are doing the stuff. Now, obviously, I know, of course, when we come up against better opposition, which we haven't really faced in this tournament, we will then see, you know, where England are at. If they go ahead and beat France, what can we say now? Do you know what I mean? What can we realistically say? We can't keep getting onto Gareth Southgate for certain, you know, decisions that he's made and things that he may or may not have done, and, you know, stuff like that. If he goes out and beats a France, obviously him going out to beat a France, that's where the real test is going to come for him. And I think he knows that. I think the team knows that. And I think the team understands that, you know, because they see it as, at the end of the day, you need to beat the best to win these kind of competitions. And if England are going to be able to win the World Cup, they're going to need to beat a France or an Argentina or whoever else they can face, a Netherlands potentially later on down the line, you know, and things like that. But if they can go and beat a France, who are probably the tournament favorites, you know, the sky is the limit. You know, all of a sudden, the sky is the limit for England. And I just think that, you know, moving forward, we just got to get behind the guy. We just got to get behind the guy, man. Like I said, he's done better than your favorite managers that we've had in the past, or any England manager that you would put. Obviously, caliber-wise, of course, he's not up there. You know what I mean? He knows that. Everyone knows that. You know what I mean? That's inevitable. But I think what I would say about someone like a Gareth Southgate, I think what he's done better than any other England manager to date is he's been able to, with this crop of players that he's got here, he's been able to kind of get them together in that club-like mentality, something that we just never had before. I personally, growing up watching England play, there wasn't that. You know, you hear the stories from Rio, from your Stevies, your Franks, and even Danny Murphy was speaking a little bit about it. You know, a lot of other players have actually spoken about this in terms of the kind of squad harmony that you would have during these international breaks, where it was such a divide. You know, you've got the top table, would we say, you know, the Man Uniteds, the Arsenal, the Liverpools and stuff like that. Then you've got like the lower end of the table, where you've just got players dotted around from other clubs who might have kind of squeezed themselves in. And I felt like that was something that, it's a hard culture. At the end of the day, this is one of the issues that England, in a general sense, as a nation, as a country, have, is that they're so engrossed in their culture. And you see it at club level as well, with a lot of fans of different clubs and stuff. Like, you're so ingrained to your culture, it's to the detriment of the team, of the club, of the squad moving forward into the future, where things are a lot different now. You know, life isn't what it was back then. You know, there's a lot more going on in this current day and age. There's a lot more, you know, social media obviously plays one of the biggest parts to that. You know, people are a lot more friendly now as opposed to what they would have been before. You know, you go away on these under 17s, 18s, 19s, 20s, 21s and stuff like that, and you're going away with boys from, you know, different teams and stuff like that, and you end up bonding, you end up, you know, forging a relationship with these kind of people. And, you know, over time, if you're forging relationships, you know, you look at like a, you know, even a Musiala with, you know, some of the England lads, or a Foden with like a Sancho, or Foden with like a Bellingham. They don't play for the same team. Yeah, they're all, in terms of Foden and Sancho, yeah, they were on the same team for Manchester City once upon a time. But, you know, as they've gotten older, you know, one moved off to do this, the other one's moved off to do that. Now they're playing for opposing teams in Manchester. So now you're looking at it and thinking, yeah, there can be that rivalry, but I'm not going to say I'm not going to say kill the rivalry, because rivalry, the tribalism in football, that's what kind of makes it, you know, beautiful, you know, in terms of that. I guess that's just the nature of it. But, you know, I look at even things like the Spain squad, you know, the famous Spain squad who won the World Cup. You know, look at that squad. That was basically a Barcelona Real Madrid team. Two of the biggest clubs in world football, two of the best clubs in world football, some of their players being able to come together for the bigger picture, for the greater good. And I felt like with England, they didn't quite understand that. None of these players really understood that. It was always going to be, at the end of the day, yeah, we're going to go back to our national team, back to our club teams, and it's just going to be, you know, back to normal, you know, the same old kind of thing, blah, 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 and all of that kind of stuff. And I just felt like, you know, that was always going to hinder England over time, because you can't say that, you know, if we had say a manager like a Gareth Southgate, someone who's able to bring people together and kind of get that club-like mentality, you know, squad harmony and things like that, it allows for everyone to just play their football. Then everyone buys into what the manager's doing. Everyone buys into what everyone else is doing. You believe other players, you know, you trust other players, maybe just that little bit more. Whereas before, you might not want to pick out that pass. Subconsciously, it might not be, people think, oh, that's silly, but subconsciously these thoughts, they always come out in actions. And when they come out in actions, you get what the crap that we've had for the past, in my lifetime, in the last 25 years, you know, where England, you just didn't understand how England just couldn't play together as a team to be able to win any tournament at all throughout their entire golden generation, shall we say, and then even the, you know, the previous generation before that. So Gareth Southgate, you have to big him up, man. Like, he's getting the results, he's getting the performances out of the players. Like, I'm looking at him almost in a different kind of light, because I'm just like, you know what? If you're able to, let's not get it twisted. It's not hard to get. Well, it shouldn't be so hard to get a good performances out of these guys. These guys are good players. You know, Foden, Harry Kane, your Jack Grealishes, your Raheem Sterlings, your Jude Bellinghams, your Declan Rice's. Like, these men are good players. They're not dead players. If they were crap players and he was getting performances out of them, I'll be like, flipping hell, you got to give, you know, you got to knight this guy. But these are already good players. All they needed was a system that would work for them to be able to flourish. They needed something that was going to allow for them to be able to, you know, show what they're showing, which is final of the Euros, semi-final of the previous World Cup. And, you know, who knows where they might go. I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win it just yet. You know, we need to wait until we get to the final first. You know, they've got a tough game against France coming up next, which is going to be the first real test, you know, that we're seeing for England in this tournament. We kind of saw it against the USA when they came up against a better team, a team that could match them energy for energy. You saw what happened. You know what I mean? It didn't really go, you know, according to plan. So it's going to be interesting to see how that France game goes. But, you know, today we're here to talk, obviously, about the, you know, England versus Senegal. And there was a couple of players that I wanted to, you know, to take a look at. One of them was Phil Foden. Now, Phil Foden, a lot of clamour for him to start games, a lot of clamour for him to, you know, be in the starting lineup, you know, somewhere in that attack. I don't think anyone really cared. They just wanted him, you know, in the team, and rightly so. Phil Foden is a fantastic player, the most technically gifted player that England have. Naturally gifted player, should I say, that England have, you know, in the squad. And, you know, Gareth Southgate in this game, he was able to utilize his attacking prowess very, very well. You know, you see him floating here on the heat map on that left-hand side. And what he was able to do with Harry Kane, which I'll show you in a minute, was they were able to swap really, really well. Now, Foden would obviously stick a lot to that left-hand side, which would obviously be to the benefit of the team in a sense. But what he was able to do was swap a lot with Harry Kane. You would find him, you know, in the pockets of spaces, you know, in behind the back line, in the pockets of spaces in the middle of Koulibaly and the other centre back. And you just thought to yourself, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like I said before in previous previews, is that when you've got a runner like a Phil Foden and you've got a Harry Kane, someone who's technically gifted enough to be able to find him, especially when he drops deep, boom, you know, you've now got it. You know, you've now got that, boom, this guy can do this, this guy can do that. You know, if you're taking a look at Harry Kane's heat map, as I said, floating in on that left-hand side, obviously floating on the right-hand side as well. But look at his positioning. Even there was times when he was at, you know, at the back, that's probably for corners potentially, but you know, there's times he's picking up ball from the central midfielders. You know, there's times he's picking up ball from the right back or from the left back, or you know, finding himself on that left-hand side, dropping deep to allow Foden, to allow Saka to make those kind of runs, and he can find them. You know, he's good enough to find these players. So of course, he is the type of man that you want, you know, in that space, in the hole, to be able to you know, release England's wingers. And when you've got fast wingers like a Foden or a Rashford or a Saka, a Sterling, when you've got these guys who can run all day at a back line, that's exactly what you need. England look a lot better when they are playing on that kind of front foot, as opposed to when they're being quite pragmatic. I feel like when England play that pragmatic style, the problem that they will have is, it depends on how Gareth Southgate sees it, but when they start playing the pragmatic style of football, so far they've not come up against it. I think against a France, you'll come up against it quite a lot, is that if you start playing pragmatic football, France can kill you at any moment. Obviously, Kylian Mbappe, you know, Ousmane Dembele, you know, even Giroud, you need to be kind of careful of, you know, because he's someone who will try to drop deep, but is still good enough to get himself in the box and on the end of things, you know. Something that I don't think Kane does a lot, as you can see his heat map there, it's not really in the box. That's not really his game. He does allow more for the wingers to kind of get in the box, which is fine, which obviously works for England's favour. But the difference, say, between him and like a Giroud is that Giroud will be in that box. You're not going to realistically find him on the wings, and that's where he, you know, he'll leave it for the Dembeles, the Comans, and or, you know, Mbappes and people like that, and then the Griezmanns who are going to be in the hole. But again, we'll get into that, you know, another time. But I felt like for Harry Kane, he is the link man for this attack. He is the one in attack that England always need to have a good game. If Kane's having a good game, you saw what happened last night. You know, he didn't get himself any assists. He finally got himself a goal. Fortuitous, if I'm being honest, because Mendy should have saved that. But regardless, he got himself a goal finally on the end of a brilliant pass by Phil Foden. Was able to get in that back line. One thing that surprises me about Kane at times is, I don't know if he's actually fast, or is he one of those like clever runners? I don't know. It's weird. Like, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Sometimes I do sit there and think to myself, like, is Kane actually fast? Like, or is it just a case of when you're clever at making runs, you look quicker than everyone else, you know, kind of thing, which again, testament to Harry Kane, man. Testament to Kane. In this system, it's working because he's a bit of he's the elder statesman in that attack. You know, he's the oldest one in that attack, you know, Foden, Saka's and Grealish, or I think he's older than Raheem Sterling as well. So he has to take, you know, that onus, that leadership role, and he's obviously the captain. So he probably feels that it's his job to be able to link this attack very, very well. And it's something that he has proven time and time again. And against Senegal, they just couldn't really handle him, if I'm being honest. Like Koulibaly, I thought he would, you know, be a lot more touch tight with someone like a Harry Kane, but again, when Harry Kane is dropping so deep and going into areas of the pitch where centre backs don't really want to get caught out, it's not going to work. It's, you know, it's not going to work for those centre backs, because no centre back wants to come. You know, you're playing centre back. You don't want, unless you're playing in a back three and you're comfortable on a right or on the left hand side of a back three. You don't want to be coming out there and, you know, trying to deal with a Harry Kane, because then you're worried about the other runners. Unless you've got 5-6 at the back who can then control what's going on behind, or, you know, once the passes have been made, you don't really want to have to be dealing with that, to be honest with you. You really, really don't. So, you know, for Harry Kane, felt like it was a really, really, really good, you know, performance. In the middle of the park, we've got Mr. Jude, Mr. Jude Bellingham. A lot of talk about Jude. Obviously, most of the talk is about where he's going to go after his time at Borussia Dortmund. It's a funny one with Jude. Overall, so far this tournament, he's been decent. He's been very, very decent. The USA game, those are the games I look at more so than your games where you're inevitably a lot better than the opposition, and everyone looks great when you're winning 3-0s and 4-0s and 6-2s and things like that. Everyone looks brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Even the goalkeeper does, unless he lets in goals. But when I look at someone like a Jude Bellingham, you can see here on the heat map, wasn't really in the center of midfield. It was kind of like him and both Henderson, which I'll show you in a minute. They were kind of almost playing like left and right midfield more than they were playing central. Now, whether that was to kind of stop the Senegal wingers like Ismaila Sarr on one side and Diatta on the other side, whether it was to kind of stop them playing, so to be able to almost pin them back so that they weren't as integral when Senegal were on the attack, which then only meant that, yes, you would only have, would I say, Declan Rice in the middle, but depending on which side they would attack. So if they attack down Sarr's side, then that would usually be Hendo's position. So then, everyone would shift across kind of thing. Then, England did that pretty well. And I found it quite interesting when I was looking at the heat maps, because I was like, you know what? I did think that they were playing quite wide, but maybe that was just my eyes, playing tricks on me kind of thing. But then when you look at the heat maps here, you can see both of them are very, very wide. Like I said, they're basically playing left. Well, Jude Bellingham is basically playing left midfield / up, left wing, at times. And I felt like, again, that's because of the movement of a Phil Foden and the link man being Harry Kane. Harry Kane, once he drops, it allows for Foden to come in. When Foden comes in, Jude Bellingham can go out to that left-hand side. Do you know what I mean? And then it just works. And this is just in attack. And I just felt what England did quite well in the game, where they were able to kind of nullify. There were a few times just before England went 1-0 up where I did think, Senegal are getting in. And I guess it's a game of risk when you play any style, any tactic, to be honest with you. It's always going to be a game of chances, percentages, and things like that. If you feel like it's only it's only going to be a few times that they're going to get in, if we can stop them scoring in those few times, then 7-8 times out of 10 we will be on the attack a lot more so we can dictate kind of what's going on. And once you go a goal or two up, especially right before half time, once that happens, it does make it a lot more easier, because then you and understand that the opposing team isn't going to then want to keep trying to do that, because it's not always necessarily going to work. And we look at Jordan Henderson, a lot of talk again about a Jordan Henderson. I myself didn't want to realistically see him play, because I felt like what we saw before England scored was why I didn't realistically want him to play. Pragmatic style, and I felt like you don't realistically need that. But because he was able to integrate Foden into that starting lineup, where I thought he was going to potentially play a Rashford, instead, Jordan Henderson played very well. Again, look, in that, yes, he was in that right central midfield position, but you can see, again, mostly in that kind of right midfield area. So it's a position that he knows very well, obviously, for playing there for Liverpool for like the last 5 years, kind of thing. And it's a position where him being there means that the right back gets the protection that they need. Now, in this case, the right back doesn't really realistically need as much protection as the one he's got at club level, but regardless, he's there for that protection. Jude Bellingham, the same. He's there for players like Luke Shaw, just to get their protection, when Senegal were on the attack. And again, Senegal didn't have, they had their chances. They did have, they had 10 goal attempts, only 2 shots on goal kind of thing. So they were having shots, but I never really felt like they were in the game, to be honest with you. England kind of nullified them well enough. And again, when you go 2-0 up just before halftime, it does make it a lot more easier. And the kind of, the attacking impetus from Senegal just wasn't really there. And they just lacked that quality, realistically in that, in the final third. But Jordan Henderson, he played really, really well. We have to give it to him. We have to give it to Gareth Southgate again. Another decision made where most fans, like myself included, who didn't want to see him play. He played a good game. got himself a goal, was able to get up the pitch enough to get himself a goal off a, guess who, Jude Bellingham assist, you know, and it's like I said yesterday in one of the group chats, I said, you can't write this stuff. You honestly can't write this stuff, you know, write these guys off at your peril. And now we've just all got to shut up and just watch what's happening. To be honest with you, you know, we look at Hendo's stats here. This is from Squawker. You know, Henderson, 100% duels won, 100% long ball accuracy, 100% shot accuracy, 89 pass accuracy, 55 touches, 8 accurate final third passes, 6 ball recoveries, 2 tackles, 2 crosses, 1 shot, and a goal. Like, that's a complete performance in the midfield. You know, that's a performance that in Hendo's prime, shall we say, which would have probably been 18, 19, 19, 20, like in that 2-year period, these were the kind of performances that he was putting in on a more consistent basis. Obviously, again, styles and systems are a lot different. For England, they don't require this level. They don't require the level of intensity that Jurgen Klopp requires from his team. So maybe in a system like this, which is what I've been screaming about, is if Klopp, and I know we're talking about Liverpool here, but if Klopp would kind of deviate from the high level of intensity that he's trying to put onto these players, you'll probably get more of these kind of Jordan Henderson performances, a lot more now, especially as he's getting a little bit older. Do you know what I mean? And obviously what helps is that you've got Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham, 2 energetic, willing runners, you know, players who can get about the pitch, which then means that Henderson isn't the one who needs to get himself around the pitch. I know we've got, you know, Elia and Fabinho and Thiago, but they're not really players who I feel can get around the pitch as well as a Declan Rice and a Jude Bellingham. But nonetheless, taking nothing away from the performance from Jordan Henderson, have to give him the props, man. Like, I give credit where credit is due all the time. Like, that was a very, very good performance, and he deserved, after that performance, he deserved his starting place. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether he keeps that spot. I feel that Southgate, he probably would more or less keep the same team. There isn't maybe a Rashford, maybe, you know, he's going to need someone to, I think the Mbappe thing is going to be something he's going to definitely want to worry about. So depending on who wants to play on that side, to kind of just nullify that, whether he decides to change tactic, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he says, you know what, we can play this way and we can attack them, but it will depend a lot. And I think England just need to get it in their heads, you know, coming up against Senegal. Obviously that's a different opposition. Senegal are a very athletic team. So you saw that in that opening 30 minutes of the game where Senegal, yes, England were having a lot more of the ball and things like that, but Senegal, you could tell it, you know, a few of the times they were getting in, you know, Sarr had that shot that just went over the bar and things like that. Like, they were getting in, but it wasn't with too much conviction. And again, a game of percentages. If that only happens a couple of times in a game, then England are not going to worry, you know, too much. You know, we see here the average position of England, as you can see. I look at the right back and left back, and the reason why I look at those 2 positions quite a lot is look at the right back position. Then his average position, Kyle Walker, barely moving across that, you know, halfway line. Shaw was just over it, you know, and I think that was just more just due to the fact that we had more of the ball on that side. But when you look at the right back's position, he doesn't require players like a Trent. Why would you need to require that? We don't need the creativity to come from the width. The creativity comes from Phil Foden or one of the wingers, whoever it might be, Foden, Rashford, Saka, Sterling, Grealish, whoever, one of the 5 wingers that we've got there, or Harry Kane. He is the link man. He is so important to England's attack. He is so vital for England to be able to, you know, play that kind of expansive football in that final third. Everything leading up to it, it's kind of the job of everyone else. You know, as you've got there, it's like you've got the back 5, and then you've got Declan Rice, who kind of slots into that almost like a third centre back. So when England do attack, he probably just kind of slots in a little bit. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the players who just kind of, they do their thing. And then, you know, they've got to try and get back, you know, as best as they possibly can. But, you know, you're seeing there, you know, in that position, again, Phil Foden, beyond Harry Kane, exactly what I was saying before. Someone like a Foden in the pockets of space, in the right system, he can get beyond Harry Kane. He can cause problems, because when he was causing problems, he got himself 2 assists. Do you know what I mean? 1 for Harry Kane. You know, these are the kind of little things. And, you know, it's very hard. I'm not trying to nitpick or, you know, anything like that, you know, because you know, at the end of the day, England, you know, got themselves the victory, and they see themselves through to the next round, inevitably with a good performance. But you know, these different opposition, and I take the USA game as being a game where I looked at England and I thought, okay, you're up against an athletic team, a team who can get about as much as you, if not more, especially in that middle of the park. And it's definitely against a team who, like I said, if USA had a better striker and someone who can actually finish, might have been a whole different, you know, conversation that we're potentially having here. But you know, inevitably they got the draw in that game, and what they were able to do was very pragmatic, very pragmatic. And I think that that's probably what he's going to look for. And it seems like Gareth Southgate is able to kind of shift between the two. He's ditched that 3 at the back, 5 at the back, whatever you want to call it. And he's decided that 4 at the back actually works, which I felt was going to be an issue for England because of Harry Maguire. You know, his lack of pace, his severe lack of pace. You know, we did see it a little bit against Iran. And this is where the game of percentages does come in. It's going to happen a few times. Of course, it's going to happen a few times. You know, you're going to have players who are going to run in behind. That might be something that he's going to need to look at. I thought maybe Saar, but what, as I said, if you looked at, you know, if we take a look here, Jude Bellingham's positioning on that left-hand side, it stops that. It stops the right winger having that, you know, Diatta, I think it was on that side. It stops him from, you know, being able to kind of push forward as much as he wants. Yeah, he's going to get in a few times if Bellingham doesn't make it out there, but it's not going to happen all the time. Jordan Henderson, again, on that right-hand side, he kind of nullified a little bit of what, you know, when you've got someone as pacey as Kyle Walker, anyway, he can match him stride for stride almost anyhow. So that part is going to help if Jordan Henderson isn't there and he does potentially get beaten. But Jordan Henderson is there, again, like Jude Bellingham, to protect that back four. It's almost like having in defensive transition, it's almost like having 3 defensive midfielders, but 1 center, 1 left, 1 right, you know, and it really does help when you're trying to nullify, you know, teams whose attacking threats are going to come, you know, from those sides. So it's going to be interesting to watch England versus France, see how Jordan Henderson, if he plays Kyle Walker, how they deal with someone like an Mbappe, someone who I always feel like he's on a periphery of games. He doesn't like to get too involved in a game of football, but on the run, Kyle Walker's not catching him. He might catch him a couple of times with me saying that now, but you know, it's definitely going to be something that England are going to need to work on. It's definitely going to be something that England are going to need to focus on. But it's like I said before, as long as you stop the supply towards a Kylian Mbappe will become ineffective in the game anyway. If you stop that supply, whether it's a Griezmann picking up the ball in the midfield area, attacking midfield areas, and not being able to thread a pass through, then England, you know, should be all right. But obviously, that's another test for another day. But look, England win 3-0 on to the quarterfinals. How far can they go, guys? How far, guys? Let me know in the comments. How far do you think England will go in this tournament? Do you see us, you know, beating France? Who is your man of the match from last night's game? I do have a few in terms of I think Henderson played well, Foden and Everton played very well, 2 assists. Harry Kane, again, I feel like he's just so important in that team that some of these things might even just go unnoticed. Yes, he scored yesterday, but even when he doesn't score, he's just so pivotal, you know, towards the team, and he allows for, you won't necessarily see England's defensive fragilities in these games because of the attacking onus that these guys are bringing. So let me know in the comments who your man of the match was from last night. England move on to the next round, and there we have my review of last night's game. Make sure you guys are liking, make sure you guys are subscribing, make sure you guys share this out to everybody you know, and I will catch you guys for the England-France preview. I'm out.